Yarek, Aisha, Behrad, 2 episodes every week. Leancast, Product Innovation and UX Design Podcast.
It's happening. This is what I've been working on for the past several months of scaling this podcast. We have recorded over 75 episodes. Finally, I've got one of the icons of the industry in front of me, Jeff Gothelf. Um, Probably most of you know the executive side that listening to this podcast may not know him. He is a veteran, an icon in the UX design, product development. He is author of 3 books. I read 2 of them. The most important one that I know is Lean UX design is fundamental for our work. Our processes at Bonanza Design is established around Lean UX design. So Jeff, it's an honor to have you with us. Thanks a lot for coming on the podcast. How are you doing today?
Behrad, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for that very kind introduction. I'm thrilled to be here and to chat about whatever you want to chat about. It's great. We can talk about lean UX. We can talk about design. We can talk about agile, product management, OKRs, vintage electric pianos, if you want to as well.
I like that one too. That's great.
I have an unusually deep knowledge of vintage electric pianos, if you want to talk about that as well.
Is that a hobby or obsession?
So I play piano. I've played piano my whole life. My father plays piano. It's kind of always been a piano in the house. You know, my kids play piano. There's always a piano in the house. But when I was in college and then after college, I played in bands for a long time, and you know, I'm a big fan of vintage electric piano sounds. Right, the sounds of pianos like the Fender Rhodes or the Wurlitzer electric piano, the A200, and things like that. And I've owned various versions of these pianos over the years. As we've downsized our living spaces over the years, just having moved around and not needed as much space, I couldn't justify a collection of vintage electric pianos. So I'm down to one. There's one I couldn't let go. It's a Fender Rhodes. It sits in my house, but otherwise, yeah. So it's a hobby at this point. It used to be a bit more of an active obsession years ago, but yeah. So we can talk about that as well.
No, it's interesting because I am planning to buy a synthesizer. For me, it's absolutely a sort of like a meditative act to sort of sit behind a synthesizer and just make noises.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the same line of passion you have as well. What is it that?
I mean, look, I like synths, and over the years I've owned a few. And these days, I mean, you know, you just need a keyboard, you know, kind of just a trigger, and then the software synth, so you can get whatever sound you want, infinite sounds. And I think that's cool. I think it democratizes the making of music, which I think is really important. I think it makes music more accessible, like music making more accessible. And I love the innovation in that space, and even the attempted innovation. I'll show you something. Actually, I have relevant to this. So. And I tell this story when I teach as well, because it's a good story about testing the market, right? You have an idea for a product, and it's kind of a radical product, and you don't know if it's going to work. And so what a lot of folks do is they use Kickstarter. And Kickstarter is a crowdfunding website, and it's a fantastic experiment that you can run for a product idea that you have, product, book, software product, whatever it is. And you know, it's just a landing page test is what
Right.
You put up an advertisement, maybe a nice video for the thing you want to make, and then you ask people to give you money.
Yeah.
Or to commit to giving you money. And if they give you enough money and you get to set the threshold, then you have to go make the thing, because now people have given you money for the thing. And so a few years ago, one of the biggest Kickstarters at the time was a thing called the Artiphone Instrument One. Artiphone is the company, and the thing was the Instrument One, and they put together one of the most compelling and successful Kickstarter campaigns I'd ever seen. And like to your point, synthesizers, interesting ways to make music, sometimes just to make noise would be really cool. And so I gave them money. The whole thing was about $300 to buy the thing. And, as all Kickstarters go, it was late. It was took probably 18 months after I pledged the money to get it. And I got it. And it sits here, right here in my office all the time. This is it. This is the Artiphone Instrument One. It is a digital instrument. It's a synth. It doesn't have a brain, right? You connect it to an app, or you can use it as a MIDI trigger for whatever you want, right? It does have a speaker on it, so you can play through it. You can play like a guitar. You can play like a percussion instrument. It's supposed to kind of revolutionize playing in a whole different way. It's supposed to. And I hate this thing. I absolutely hate it. It's awful. You cannot make any good anything come out of this thing. It's terrible, right? And I tried, because I really wanted this to work. I kind of wanted it. I'm not a good guitar player. I've always messed around on guitar, but I stink at it. I never put the time in. And I was like, this is what's going to make me a better guitar player, because again, I'm a piano player, and this thing is terrible. And they've never made another one. They've made other musical instruments,
right?
But and you can go to their website and they'll show you some people who can make some decent noise out of this thing. But this is a great example of how you can test the market for an idea, a unique idea, which this is. This is a really interesting musical instrument. You can get amazingly positive market response.
Right.
Build the thing.
Yeah.
And then everybody hates it.
So would you conclude that they failed at product design? They failed at putting together experience that could live up to the promise that initially advertised?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's because when I really thought, I really thought this was going to be the thing that, I don't know, sort of, look, I'm not the kind of musician who's always looking to reinvent their play.
Right.
I enjoy my playing. It's a hobby. I'm not trying to become some successful musical artist. But I really thought this was going to kind of make me rethink music in a new way. And that's really how they pitched it. They're like, you can really build new textures in traditional ways and new ways. And it's awful. It's just terrible. It just does not work as advertised, right? And that, it's a great story. It's a great product design story. It's just an interesting story. And if you're looking to make some noise, that's what will come out of this thing. Noise.
You touched upon a really good topic, and I'm really happy that we start from here. Is basically the sheer amount of complexity and uncertainty when it comes to new technologies, when it comes to not like a new insurance product. This is not a revolutionary innovation. It's about what I'm talking about, leveraging new technologies like blockchains or Web3 or NFT or metaverse or anything that we don't know so much. There is not enough examples out there or competitors out there, or there is the product category hasn't been formed yet. That's where like a lot of our clients we see a lot of resistance from them to do anything. So they know that they have to ship this thing at some point, but they're so paralyzed to make any moves. And one of the recent posts that you started with, experimentation is risky, right? So and it sort of resonated with me, especially we have two ongoing clients that they're dealing with these new technologies, but they listen to us, but at the same time we see that they are pushing back and they don't want to get into the field of validation and getting to these early market signals. So what's your take on this?
I mean, look, innovation is risky. experimentation is significantly less risky because, well, let me rephrase that. Lean or lightweight experimentation is significantly less risky. I think if you're looking at a new technology and you're saying, look, we're just going to deploy it and see what happens, that is massively risky and unnecessarily so. You do not need to do that. I think experimentation, particularly lightweight and lean experimentation, starts to give you a sense of, is there a need that we are currently not meeting with our products and services? How might we better serve our customers to meet this need? And then can we deploy this new technology in a way that fundamentally improves the experience, the user experience, the value that we provide to the market? And I think that a lot of organizations, particularly when a new technology comes out, like Web3 or NFTs or AI or whatever it is these days, right? They're like, oh my God, we have to have it. Put it in immediately. And without really thinking through what use cases are we improving? Or perhaps what new use cases are we creating that might provide more value? And I think that pausing just for, again, not for lengthy periods of time,
right?
Pausing for a week, a sprint, a month, depending on the cycle time and the industry that you work in, a quarter, if that's realistic, and really running the kinds of experiments that inform whether or not there is a meaningful problem to solve here or to improve upon the solution that we've currently got solving this problem, and various ways that this new technology may do that is infinitely more valuable than just deploying it. Look, let's be completely honest about it. The best way for you to learn whether or not a new technology deployed in a particular way will benefit and meaningfully impact your business and your target audience is to build it and ship it at full scale. Right? That's the truth. Right? It is also by far the riskiest and the most expensive. So if you do it, you will learn whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, but it may be your only chance to learn. And so experimentation takes that same level of risk and expense and breaks it down into smaller bits. So let's run a small experiment and see what we learn. Okay, let's run the next more meaningful experiment based on what we've learned. On the next one after that. And as long as the signal from the market continues to be positive, yes, we're solving a real problem. Yes, we can improve on the delivery of value in this space. Yes, we can improve, the customer experience here. Then the sophistication, the level of effort, the level of expense for each of our experiments grows until such a time where we have enough evidence to justify the expense and the risk of building software. Generally speaking, we don't need to start there. I mean, I'll give you an example, and this is from years ago, but it's highly relevant to the AI craze that we're going through right now. I used to help. I helped co-found and run a consulting company, a product studio based in New York City called Neo. And as it tends to happen with consulting practices, sometimes you have people on the bench. And the people that we had on the bench for a little while were particularly smart, entrepreneurial people who would get bored easily, and we didn't want them to quit. So we said, look, you've got some downtime. You've got whatever it was, like 4 weeks or 6 weeks. Go build something. Go find a problem to solve and go build something. So they did. They talked to some folks. They ran some experiments. They looked around. And they decided to build an advice service for men, a chat-based or text-based advice service for men. And in doing the work, they had come up with a persona that was going to be the person who answers these advice questions for men.
Right.
And they decided to launch the service on Hacker News, and it shot up to the top. And when they were hoping to get like 10 or 15 people to sign up for the waiting list to test this thing out, they got 1,000. And so they were like, well, what do? We actually don't have any technology built yet. We've just tested the market for demand, and the landing page collected 1,000 signatures. And so what they did was what's called a Wizard of Oz experiment, or an MVP, where men would ask the service questions via the interface that they had built. They'd hack together a bunch of different services, Twilio and a lightweight landing page and a couple of other things. And there were humans on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, it was the team. There were a couple of women on the team who were providing this advice to men. And then we had hired a couple of contractors when the scale got a little bit bigger. So we had 4 or 5 people actively answering requests for advice from men in the style of this particular persona that we had created. Alexis was her name, right? The service was called Ask Alexis. And we learned very quickly what kinds of will people ask questions? What kind of questions?
Yes.
What kind of answers were they looking for? Were they helpful? Would they come back and ask again? Would they tell a friend? All of those types of things, in an effort to then determine whether we were going to automate this service.
Wow.
Right. Now, look, this whole thing, and by the way, the net result of this was we decided not to pursue the product any further. For a variety of reasons. The feedback, the scale, the scope, the focus for the studio wasn't on brand for us. There were all kinds of reasons for us not to pursue this. But we decided not to pursue it. But it wasn't without data, right? The decision was made with data. And the whole thing start to finish, I think took 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks. I don't remember. It's been a little while since then. The point of all of that is that we were able to test an idea and build almost no software. Very, very lightweight software, like a landing page, a couple of back-end, integrations, and that's it. Because if this thing had been successful and we had decided to deploy it, we would have had to figure out how this scales in a meaningful way. Did we have to hire, 100 full-time people to answer these questions? Is AI the answer? AI was obviously very nascent at the time. And so we were able to learn very, very quickly before deploying software. And that's the key. And with all of these new technologies, there's such a rush. Well, they have it. We have to have it. They're doing it. Oh my God, there's so much stuff coming out, right? Without really paying attention as to what's actually valuable and what people are actually doing with it and where there is actual value for these types of technologies. And so if you just paused for a minute and did a little bit of that research, a little bit of that experimentation, the level of risk comes down significantly, because then you can make an educated decision about where to deploy, how to deploy, what success looks like, or not to deploy at all. And that to me is massively valuable, but it's a tough sell. It's a tough sell in organization.
And that's a brilliant example, because basically based on the most frequent requests from all those potential customers that you were receiving, you could take those data and sit with your team and say, based on the current AI capabilities or whatever technology is available, can we streamline this? Can we automate this? Can we turn this into a semi-automate or fully self-service product? Because that's the whole point of having a product, is to not have an army of Wizard of Oz in the background to do all of these things.
Right. But again, it's at the very least, it gives you a sense of demand.
Yes.
Usage of where the real value is in your idea, rather than the fixation on the deployment of the technology. I think that's, look, we've seen this. We saw this with machine learning. We saw this with NFTs. We saw this with Web3. We're seeing it with AI right now, and it's fascinating. But it's this kind of FOMO. Well, oh my God, we're gonna be left behind here.
Yeah.
Rather than understanding the best way to do it. Look, some of these organizations, right? You think about sort of, Google got caught a bit flat-footed when OpenAI was like ChatGPT, and the whole world freaked out.
Yeah.
Right. Google can afford to deploy broadly right? Because they've got money, they've got people, they've got users who aren't going to disappear overnight, right? And so those organizations, if they want to go big on this kind of stuff, okay, go big. You learn quickly with the type of audiences that they have. The majority of organizations don't have billions of users, and so you, particularly, in just smaller enterprises or in B2B situations, and so deploying broadly is
Wrong strategy.
riskier.
Yeah,
For your organization.
100%.
Yeah.
We have a client, cannot say so much about it, but they want to do a sort of like a blockchain art gallery, right? Really fixated on this for a very specific product category. And I was like, okay, you're really fixated on these and you want to like get this off the ground, but you know that if you want to get behind the whole blockchain side of things, it's going to take several months to figure out the technology and put it into a experience that is usable, not like this, like the guitar thing you purchased that you cannot use it. So I was just like, why don't we start with a simple Shopify?
Right.
You put all your stuff in there, join the waiting list, see how many demands you generate. It's still the same product. You are going to sell them the same product, but like the technology is not there. But you can basically create all these contracts manually.
Yeah.
If things come down to it. And then one thing that I'm realizing that whenever I'm joining this conversation, joining these calls, and I say, hey, there is another way of approaching scaling your business, somehow they get it, but they don't get it. I don't know how to explain it.
I mean, what do you mean there's other ways to scale the business? I don't understand.
So instead of like building the blockchain side of things, build a Shopify and get out there and like test it with the market and generate demand.
Yeah, well,
they say, but it's not the real platform.
That's right. I mean, Shopify is a real platform, right? You just don't own it, right? But why build the thing that Shopify does at scale without the evidence to justify it, right? I mean, that's exactly right. Look, there's so many, like this whole no code movement, right? It's tremendously powerful, right?
Yeah,
this
idea,
like you can build businesses by hooking up all of these services together and never coding anything. And the risk there is trivial. I mean, it's literally it's signing up for these services and then hooking them, connecting them all together, which is again, you don't need to be an engineer to do that. And you're up and running. And then the question is, great. Now, how do you drive demand? How do you drive traffic? How do you drive interest in this thing? And if you can do that, and if you can prove that there's demand and that there's value, and then the folks in that interaction are saying, well, this is really great, but if it only did this, it would be better. Or if it only did that, then you've got the evidence to say, okay, great. The Shopify platform helped us prove our idea. It's not going to scale in the way that supports this new business direction. So now we're going to take it off and we're going to move on to something else. It's a fundamentally different way of thinking, but it's tremendously powerful because it allows you to learn quickly and then to adjust course quickly, right? The sort of the agility of thinking, the agile mindset, lowercase a, right, is tremendously powerful in these situations.
I was in a discussion panel last week, Jeff, and there were like 150 designers in the salon, and the general design community sentiment or morale when it comes to current laid off and generative AI is very not positive. Let's say it like this.
Sure.
But to your point that you said about no code movement, my point on the panel was like, actually, there is a huge upside potential coming down the way of designers these days, because it's not like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, that we were really dependent on developers to get our ideas out there on the market. With as less background or understanding of tech, now designers could run their experiment, run their ideas online, and get to the market.
Sure.
So potentially you could do some of the front-end developers, or like most of what a front-end developer does for you now with no code movement, and you potentially with like Zapier and Twilio or whatever, you can run small apps.
Yeah.
So of course, generative AI is closing down on you on the interface side, but on the other side, there's a huge potential, huge opportunity windows is opening for designers. What's your take on this?
I mean, look, it's. I understand why people are scared.
Yeah.
I think I think it's legitimate. I don't want to trivialize that. Right. This is looking like it's going to fundamentally change how everybody works in a variety of
Mhm.
different fields. However, we have had, quote unquote, you can call them threats, or you can call them sort of evolutions of the practice for years now. I mean, you think about design systems
Right.
and design frameworks. You could argue that Bootstrap homogenized the web, right? For every site looked like Bootstrap forever, right? In my opinion, Bootstrap saved people a ton of time, right? I don't need to reinvent forms and buttons and labels and things like that. We've got a decent best practice to start from.
Mm-hmm.
So that saves me hours. Those templates and those types of design systems, whether we're borrowing external design systems or we're creating our own inside an organization, they provide us with starting points that are based on the work that people have done for years and have determined these are good starting points. Are they going to be best practices that work well in every situation? No, but they get you from zero to something very, very quickly, right? One of the best things I read recently about generative AI is that it kind of gets rid of the blank page.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. I think the blank
Mm-hmm.
page, as someone who's been a designer, a writer, a product manager, and has had to create artifacts and things forever, the blank page is terrifying. I sat in front of the blank page yesterday trying to think through this week's blog post, and if there was a template that could get me started, or a baseline I could start from, and then add in sort of the unique things that make those creations my own or relevant in a particular context that I know about, then that's terrific. And so yes, there will be work that we used to do that we don't do anymore. But I'd like to believe that will free us up to do more of the work that we actually want to do. Right? If I think back on my career, I think back 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I spent a tremendous amount of time just creating wireframes, just literally putting boxes on screens. If there was something where I could say like homepage wireframe linked to standard e-commerce checkout flow wireframes, go, and it gave me 6 screens to start from, that would save like a week of my life from back then, right? And then I could say, okay, great. Now I've got something to work from. What makes sense in my current situation? We're going to take this out. I need to add this other thing in, right? In this context, it doesn't make sense. Like these product attributes don't make sense because we're selling yachts or automobiles or whatever it is, right? And so to me, I think there's a tremendous opportunity here to dedicate more of our time to doing
Right.
things that humans are uniquely good at. I hope that's kind of my hope in all of this.
Something that I would like to bring it up, and you mentioned earlier when we talk about innovation technologies, you said you outline a 3-step process. First of all, to see whether there's a need out there. Second, how can we meet this need? Third, is there technology that we can use to amplify our solution? I think that's where UX designers from now on needs to be focusing on.
Right. You can't ask the AI, is there a problem here? Right?
Right.
You can't ask the AI, is this solution going to solve that problem? Right? Right? Only humans can tell you that. And you could ask the AI, hey, help me compose an interview guide to determine whether this idea might solve a problem. I think that that's great. Again, like particularly, I think if the models where these generative AI tools have been trained on are being properly credited and hopefully compensated for the data that they've provided into these models, I think that's fantastic, right? Why would I want to stare at the blank page when this can get me going? Can save me the time that I could spend actually doing the things that humans are uniquely better at than machines.
So my curiosity here is like you've written Lean UX. It's been a while now. Let's say like this.
Well, I've written it 3 times.
Yes. So how, like, reflection, like what kind of observation you had initially that led you to writing the book and edited multiple times, and how do you see, if you want to now look at, if you were to write it for the fourth time, would you, based on the current revolutions that we are observing on the AI front, on the tools that we are seeing, how would you think, would you write it differently, or would you add new insight or new angles that would be unique to the fourth edition?
Look, I think we would have to, right? I think we'd have to recognize the technological reality. I think if I was writing it today, I wouldn't know what to say, right? The whole chat GPT takeover of sort of the collective hive mind here has been, what, 3 months old,
Yeah.
4 months old, and as I keep reading about, it's one tool in 1,000 different companies that are now building AI tools. And so I wouldn't know what to say, but I think it would be irresponsible not to talk about new tools that could make the collaborative product design and development process better, faster, more efficient. And inevitably the process may change based on some of these tools. But I think it's too early. I just think we need to acknowledge it. And again, to me, kind of coming back to the conversation we had a few minutes ago, I think this is the way things are shaping up right now for organizations and leaders who are hesitant to spend time and effort on experimentation. This is yet another tool that condenses the time to learning.
100%.
Right? So what we just talked about, right? The fact that I don't have to stare at a blank page and think, oh, I got to ask these 5 people's questions tomorrow. What should my interview guide say? Right? Help me start with something, or help me think through like, we're going to start with a modern e-commerce checkout flow. Let's get that on the screen. Okay, great. Now let's adjust it for these parameters, right? Like the fact that this can get us up and running and put ideas out into the world much more quickly reduces the cost of our experimentation, and it speeds up the learning. And to me, that's tremendously valuable. And if that's at least one of the many ways that this plays out, then that would be a huge inclusion in a new version of Lean UX.
And also it's like intensifying the competition as well. Those companies or those actors in the game of entrepreneurships that uses these tools to expedite their learnings will distance themselves exponentially from those who don't.
Absolutely, right. And look, that's always been the case, right?
Right.
I mean, look, every now and again, and let's be honest, it's rare. It does happen, but it's rare. But every now and again, someone comes along and is a genius, right? And this, you could probably count it on this hand, right? There's five or fewer people who actually qualify, right, as a genius. And so for the rest of us, right, this makes us better at learning. Companies that are good at learning do better, right? They make better products. They adjust to the needs of the world around them in a more efficient, more reliable way. And if there are tools that can make them even faster at learning and even faster at decision making, then yeah, you're right. It's gonna make them exponentially better at this, and increase that gap
Yeah.
between organizations that struggle to learn and struggle to
Right.
adjust course, and those that are getting better at it.
Jeff, it's 2023, and believe it or not, I think you feel it better than me. You observe it better than me. You interact more with such folks out there. There is an army of ERP tools out there that need desperately a revamp on their UX, on their product experience. It's still unbelievable how many out there, right? So if you, and there's actually a portion of our audience are product executives that are from those traditional enterprises. If you want to give a definition of brand new, updated definition of lean UX, considering all of this, how would you break down how would you break down lean UX and why it's important for them to incorporate such a mindset?
Yeah. So I think a kind of a modern definition of lean UX is that it's a customer-centric, collaborative product design and development process designed to bring forward a set of hypotheses about how we might solve specific customer problems, and then define or determine quickly through experimentation and learning which ideas hold the greatest chance for success. That's roughly, I think, where it is today as a definition, and it's incredibly valuable in the B2B space, in the ERP space, and every space, but B2B as well, because we take for granted that our customers will buy and then their people will use. And we forget that there are actual humans at the end of the value chain who actually have to interact with these tools. And if they continuously struggle with it and they deliver poor results to their bosses are going to stop buying from us. And so building in that conversation in B2B environments from the beginning is crucial to their success. And the Lean UX process forces those conversations. I have a big client right now who's a big B2B, B2B2C type of provider. And you ask them, so who's your customer? And they will say, it's the streaming media company, right? Or they'll say, it's Uber, right? Or something along those lines. And we literally have to push back regularly and say, okay, but who are the humans inside the streaming media company that buy and then integrate and then deploy the product and service that you provide for them? Oh, okay. Well, it's the marketing manager. Oh, it's this person, it's that person, right? And the Lean UX process forces those conversations at the beginning, so that this is not an afterthought, and so that we're always considering the needs of the humans inside the organizations that buy from us, both the choosers and the users, as we like to say, right? The buyers as well as the people who actually have to use the product.
And also, it's interesting that you brought this one up, because always, like, when you talk to the people who are in the organizations and they expect us to drive impact for them, I think we have a different understanding of impact. They think about output, more revenue, more contracts. But design thinkers, because we can use our right side effectively, we look at, okay, how is the experience? How is the delivered experience for the people who are actually using it? So it's always, for me, my experience is always a big disconnect between it's always a disconnect. When I go to these calls, it's always a disconnect. I want to understand the users and sort of like the experience, the context, the texture. But the ones that hire me, they want to drive revenue. So it's always this gap, and it's actually an art. I don't have any prescription of how we can bridge this gap, but I just wanted to get your take on this.
Sure. So this is a common problem. This has been a common problem for decades. I suspect it will continue to be a common problem. Now, as intractable as that may sound, I actually believe that these are all parts of the same conversation. They are. There is a thread that you can connect all parts of this conversation, but someone has to do it. And I think that if the people who come to this conversation come at it, well, I want revenue and I want features, but I want to talk to customers and I want outcomes, and like all of these things, we never see the full picture. It's like everybody's just sort of like screaming in their silo. And so it's going to take somebody, right? And that's going to be a product manager or a designer or an executive in a leadership position who can see the forest for the trees to thread all of these things together. And sometimes it actually literally takes a visualization to put it together. So those folks in the room, right? We can say, look, you want revenue, right? Revenue is an impact metric. It's a high-level measure of the health of the business. Terrific. What do people currently do when they use our products and services that drives revenue, right? What are the behaviors within the system that drive revenue? Let's visualize those. Okay, let's talk about that. What are some behaviors that they don't currently do that we want them to do? Yeah. We think will drive revenue. Let's visualize those. And let's just literally connect boxes and arrows, right? Let's literally put Post-its on a page or a digital whiteboard or whatever and connect these things together. When somebody does this, and then they do this, then they buy, and then we make money, right? Or whatever it is, right? And we connect all those pieces, right? And then the third piece of that conversation is, okay, great. What products do we currently have? What features do we currently have that trigger these behaviors? Let's write those down and let's connect them, right? This product drives this behavior, which leads to this, and then people buy, right? What products are we thinking about building, right? Okay, great. Let's connect them to the behaviors that we'd like to see or that we want to see more of that we know drive revenue. And so what you're doing, you're building this tree, right? It's a tree. It's an impact map. You may have seen it from Gojko Acek. Josh Seid and I talk about it as an outcome map. Teresa Torres's opportunity solution tree is a good version of these kind of decision trees as well. But essentially what you're doing is you're threading this entire, all the pieces of this conversation into one. And if you can do that successfully, you can get some folks in a room who are talking about all these pieces, the light bulbs tend to go on at that point, right? Because what you're starting with the goal, right? The goal is for executives, money. Okay.
Yeah,
make
that's
money.
It.
Terrific. How do we make money? What do people do that makes us money? Okay. We're not talking about features, right? What do people do? So right away, you're shifting the conversation away from output to outcomes. Great. Now, what can we make that drives this behavior? What do we believe to be true? And then the last piece of this conversation is, okay, strategically, what do we care about right now? Right? Because if you do this properly, you can end up with a whiteboard with dozens of Post-it notes connected.
100%.
It's not particularly clean. It's messy. And so then everybody's looking at it and they're saying, well, where do we start? Well, so great.
Yeah.
What's strategically important over the next 6 to 12 months? Okay, let's get that out there. Okay, so based on that strategically important goal, or the thing that we're focusing on strategically, expansion into North America,
yeah,
whatever it is, who knows what it is. Well, let's carve out, and then how many people do we have? Right, we don't have infinite people. Great, so let's carve out a set of strategically important behavior changes that map to the people that we have today, and let's get them working on improving the features that we currently have to drive those behaviors, and maybe building some new things to drive some new behaviors as well. And so all of those things, all those parts of that conversation are actually part of the same conversation. They're just not being had at the same time. And it takes somebody with the vision and the opportunity and frankly, a little bit of credibility and authority,
right?
Read those things together. And I'll be honest with you, and it stinks for a lot of people. It's good for people like me. External consultants are particularly good at this, right?
With credibility,
The credibility,
like yourself.
exactly. You have the outside credibility. I have no baggage, right? We have no baggage when we come in, no politics. I don't care
Yeah.
who's
Yeah.
in the room. I don't care who's what. We're going to talk about this whole sort of map of ideas and goals and features and thread it together. And that is, to me, is massively powerful and can be one conversation.
Can be a one conversation, a 2-hour workshop, 3-hour workshop if it's done right.
With the right people in the room.
With the right people. Yeah. And that's why you are so wanted, because you can deliver those 3 hours, 2-hour workshops and get them to success.
Well, look, it gets them to a shared understanding, right?
Right.
Like a 3-hour workshop is not going to solve massive problems in an organization. What a 3-hour workshop does is it builds shared understanding.
Right.
Everybody leaves the room with the same mental model. And then as everybody then goes and begins to execute their part of the work, we have an objective lens to filter that work. Hey, what are you guys doing over there? Well, we're building this feature. Okay, why? Right? Because like we talked about this, right? We're trying to drive this type of behavior. Do you believe that this feature is going to drive this behavior? Well, no, but the boss told us to build it. Okay, let's go talk to the boss. Okay, hey, boss, you remember when we were in the room together and we said these are our priorities? Now you're telling them to go do something outside of the priorities. Oh, you're right. Okay, right. So it's about accountability after that and having that objective lens. But at least getting folks to that initial shared understanding is very powerful.
It's 1,000 different directions I can take this. Like, this is such a valuable 10 minutes that you went down this impact outcome tree. And one thing that really stuck out here for me is that the way you broke it down, there is an output, you put the behavior in between, desired behavior, who we are going after in terms of people who are using this thing, and then you put the future at the lower level, which is, in my view, is brilliant, because that's what a lot of organizations, that's a virus in a lot of organizations, future trap.
Yeah.
They are like build trap. They just want to build without having this system thinking in place, that where they want to go, what they want to achieve, and also something else that you said brilliantly is that how many people do we have to build this thing, to execute on this thing, which is completely not talked about in these workshops.
No. The other thing too, and it's an interesting thing that I think a lot of folks don't get, and when you literally say it to them, it's a bit of a shock, is that in the kind of with the modern nature of technology, right? We build continuous systems; they exist forever. We live with this code forever. The variable is the feature. It used to be the fixed thing, right? We are building this thing and we are shipping it on Tuesday, right? The variable today is the product, is the feature, because that changes continuously. What we're trying to maintain is a consistent set of behaviors in our customers. We want them to come. We want them to use it. We want them to use it a lot. We want them to spend money. We want them to tell their friends, right? Whatever it is. How we get them to do that is the variable. I mean, think about this, the sort of the services that we all use on a daily basis. Everything from Netflix to Amazon to Google Maps to iOS to Android, right? All of these services are trying to get us to essentially do the same thing on an ongoing basis.
Ah, I see.
But the way that they get us to do that changes over time, right? When I signed up for Netflix, my first daughter had just been born. They sent me discs in the mail, right? That's how they got me to watch movies, which is all that was. Today, they want me to watch movies. They send me emails and they're like, hey, there's a new sci-fi show that we know you'll love, because they know me, right? And so like and the way they deliver it is different, and the way that they promote it. And so the point is that it's the product that's the variable. It's the features that are the variable these days. And that to me is a mindset that I don't think a lot of folks actually get. And it's extremely valuable once an organization grasps that, because then we don't hang our careers, our egos, our existence on these features. We're going to put stuff out there, and it's going to work, or it's not going to work, or it might work for a little while and then we'll do something else, right? The thing that we should hang our careers and success on is, are we continuously solving real problems for real people in a meaningful way? And the variable in that is going to be products and services. The behavior change is what's going to be the constant.
Netflix CEO once said, "My competitors are not only Apple TV, it's nightlife activities in the city."
Exactly.
Wow. So variable is the future. That's actually took me a while to get it. That's so true. We want to drive the behavior, whatever variable, whatever future, whatever how is out there that we can deliver that behavior. We should try it, we should identify it, we should test it and see whether it works.
Yeah.
So this way we don't fall flat on the bill trap phenomenon.
Right.
We actually not super invested emotionally and financially on the future that we are building. We are more obsessed on that behavior because we know how that behavior contribute to the overall picture, which is more money.
Right, exactly. And if the thing that we're building doesn't drive that behavior, then we have to build something else, right? And that's the thing that it is the driving force in the organizations that do well, right? That continue to do well.
That's beautiful. Something that I would like to bring it up to the attention, that all this, the whole going through the outward behavior futures is basically for one person to for a folk to be able to do that, they need to have a good grasp of design thinking and how system works from the bird's eye view.
Yes.
And this is a skill that it's so underplayed, underscored, and no one pays a lot of attention to it. But it's a skill that is desperately needed in big organizations.
That exercise I talked about before, when I said, okay, let's put money at the top,
Yeah.
behaviors, right, and then the features. One of the risks of that exercise is that you will put a leader into that room, and then you ask the question, okay, what behaviors drive money, right? What behaviors drive revenue? And they won't know. And that speaks to your point. And that happens a lot, right? They may not know, right? And so the risk, of course, in facilitating that session is, if you make them feel stupid, they will shut down and get angry and leave. But the point is you're exactly right. The understanding of the system, the understanding of the various triggers and their impact on behaviors within the system is critical. And if leaders of organizations don't know that, they need to.
And the cool thing about that's the art, because as an external, you want to make sure that everyone in the room looks good, especially the executive.
Yeah.
But at the same time, not knowing what behaviors drive the revenue is a no-go for me, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And yet, right, I think a lot of leaders in a lot of organizations, particularly as the organizations get bigger, kind of lose touch with kind of what's happening in the system, and they fixate a lot more on the features, because the features are tangible. The output are tangible, right? Did you build the mobile app? Yes, we did. Here, you can see it, right? And the features are binary, so it's easy to measure, right? Did you build it? Yes, I can see it. So you did it. Therefore, I know you did something, right? Rather than, hey, I shifted behavior. Well, how did you do it? Well, I tried these 3 different things, right? That becomes a much different conversation.
As it's much riskier for the employees too to focus on the outcome rather than the output. And to your point, I can justify my activities by saying that I designed this future rather than I've been researching on new ways of driving impact for the entire organization.
Yeah.
Jeff, I know your time is tight. It's been a surprisingly a very, very learningful the conversation for me.
Good.
It's the last 5 minutes, and it's my duty and to give you the flowers that you deserve. You've been fundamental. Your thoughts, your books, your LinkedIn posts, fundamental for so many people in our industry's career, like myself. So I cannot thank you enough to be so gracious to come on this podcast and gave us a really crash course on experimentation, where we are heading when it comes to new ways of product development and output versus outcome.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. That's very kind of you to say. And it was a pleasure chatting with you, Behrad. And thanks again for having me on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.